I'm standing in the parking lot of the lodge and I'm showing the other hunters this video of this stag just roaring and thrashing and while I was showing them the video on my phone, I kid you not, a stag comes in 50 yards away and starts roaring at the tree line. It came in
You
to
called it
fight.
in.
I
Yep, you
called him
called
in,
it.
showing the guys a video, but there was just so many stags. It was just unbelievable.
Kyle, we're here to talk about Hungary. You just got back a couple months ago from going and kind of vetting a new outfitter over there in Europe, and we're a little late, but I guess getting her done. So that's good.
Yeah, we are here to talk about Hungary finally. And we're a little bit behind, but we are all pretty much out of office. And when one person is in office, the other person is not. And that's just the fall schedule for us. I mean, to kind of recap too, since you and I last did a podcast, it was either right before I left for Russia this spring or right after I got back from Russia, which we still haven't recapped that.
You're right.
The Russian spring brown bear, which, spoiler alert, it was a epic success. We'll leave that for another podcast in and of itself.
Can't believe we haven't
But
done that.
since I know, and that's how busy our summer is too. I mean, all the pre-fall preparations that we do with our outfitters to help sort out logistics, fielding questions for our clients, getting ready to go into the field. We don't get summers off. It's just a different kind of busy. So, those are all good excuses, but they're still excuses. So since the fall has kicked off, we've had the caribou season in the north, which was epic this year. I went and vetted the new outfitter in Hungary in September during the stag roar, which was amazing. That's what we're going to talk about today. But since then, I went on my personal mountain goat hunt in Alaska early October and then turned around. And then I just got back from spending a month in Asia hosting and PHing Marco Polo and Ibex hunters, which was incredible. And then we wanted to get this podcast recorded before I leave again next week to go host hunters on Kodiak for Sitka Blacktail. So here we are.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah,
Crazy. Is it just one
we've
group
got
of
it pretty rough.
blacktail hunters? Just one group, right?
Yeah, just one group. And it's over Thanksgiving week, so that'll actually work out pretty good for work here, where I'm not quite as busy that week. So that'll be fun. That's one of my favoriteest trips ever. DIY vessel-based Sitka Blacktail.
I still haven't done it.
Yeah, we need to get you up there on that one.
By the
And
way,
Hungary.
everybody, if you yes, and hungry, but real quick on the blacktail, go apply for our OI draw. We have a sweet blacktail draw going on right now, and it doesn't seem like there's as much interest in it as I thought there would be, but I think it's because it's for a group of 6, and getting 6 guys together has been tough for people, I think. But still, you could win a DIY Sitka blacktail vessel-based hunt for a group of 6 for $25.
Mm-hmm.
For just $25. You should go put in.
Yeah, and we really thought that one was going to take off too, because if 6 buddies all spend a few $100 each on the tickets, I mean, the odds are in your favor to win.
Absolutely.
And
Yep.
each guy is only going to have a few $100 in it. So we really thought that one was going to take off, and I still just can't say enough good things about the vessel-based DIY Sitka blacktail hunts. I think they're some of the best value hunts in North America. And that one in particular is based out of Southeast Alaska, where you can still take multiple bucks. And not only that, you can waterfowl hunt, fish, crab, do all the normal activities all in one week with all meals and accommodation provided for a great value.
Yeah.
That's my hunt every single year that has replaced my family deer camp back home.
Noticed.
Oh my God, I love that trip. This is like my 5th or 6th time in a row.
That's cool. I still haven't done it. That's stupid.
Yeah, you need to go next year.
Yeah, I'd love
Maybe
to.
you can take my place next year.
Sounds
Yeah.
good. If we can pull it off, that'd be great. I need to get
Absolutely.
this computer.
Yeah,
Getting there.
get a little sunlight instead of blue light.
Yeah, for sure. Seems like all I've gotten this year. Anyway,
Yeah, I agree.
Hungry.
So Hungary red stag. So this is
Yep.
a really interesting one. I'm just tickled about this hunt because I honestly went into it not knowing how awesome this hunt was going to be. And I wanted to check out a new area of Europe. I've known for a long time that the red stag genetics in Hungary are the best in the world. It's actually the origin of every trophy red stag bloodline everywhere in the world. Argentina free range trophy stags originally came from Hungary. The estate stags, high fence stags in New Zealand, that's originally Hungarian bloodline. Same with every high fence genetic of red stag originated from Hungary. And so I actually knew there was a lot of really good stuff there. And one of our partners in Argentina this year, while him and I were down there hosting clients this spring, he mentioned to me, he said, Kyle, if you really love red stag hunting, you need to take time to go check out Hungary too. And that was coming from an Argentina outfitter. And he described it to me. He said the stags there, they get so much bigger, they grow to an older age, this, that, and the other. And I'm just thinking, why would that be? And this is really interesting. He pointed out to me that, the stags in Hungary live to be 12 to 15 years old, but in Argentina, they live to be 7 or 8 usually. And that's just a difference in vegetation mostly. It wears their teeth down differently. So Argentina is more dry, arid, sandy, whereas Hungary is more green, lush, and higher precip. It's that simple. So
Yeah,
that
that's
really had
crazy.
my attention, even though technically they have the same stags, right? And coincidentally, right after this spring, I had I had some contacts reach out to me about Hungary, and everything just came together really, really well. And we started researching it and, doing the background checks on the outfitter, doing the desk vetting, let's call it, and everything checked out. And so I decided, yeah, I want to go over there and vet it. And that's where it all started really, this spring. And diving into it, one of the first things that really impressed me was the level of customer service on European hunts is second to none for the cost. I mean, they offer a great value for a top shelf experience. So that's huge. And then right away, when I was booking my flights to Hungary, that's when I was also impressed. I told you, Corey, my
Yeah,
round trip ticket from Chicago, Illinois, Budapest, Hungary, with a layover in Vienna was $633 round trip.
that's crazy.
And because you can rent a rifle, because these trips are, meals, lodging, all inclusive, everything provided, I traveled with carry on. So I didn't even have luggage fees. And I just rented a rifle while I was over there because my intent going over there was more to go tour ranches, meet the outfitter, maybe do a little hunting, but most importantly, go see all the ranches and meet the guides and just understand operations better. And so I really didn't need to bring anything, but still, if I was hunting 5 days versus traveling for 5 days in country, all you need is a carry-on, set of binos, 2 changes of clothes, and the ones you're wearing, throw your hunting boots on for the ride, and you're good to go. So super impressed with the customer service. The travel in and out of Europe was very easy, very affordable. I mean, when I fly from Chicago out to Boise, Idaho to go hang out with you guys, that's a $700 plane ticket right there. So, I mean, that really set the stage for the trip. Once I arrived, the outfitter, he was Johnny on the spot. His driver was right there waiting for me coming out of the airport to do the ground transfer from the airport in Budapest to the ranch, which, by the way, touching on the ranches and leases, in Europe, they call them estates. And so to not confuse that with a high fence, an estate in Europe is a lease or a ranch.
Like a ranch
They're,
lease. Yeah.
yeah, they're one and the same. So on this podcast, if you hear me say this estate or that estate, I'm not talking about a high fence. I'm talking about a ranch lease. So just to clarify that, just different verbiage in Europe. And so when I got picked up at the airport, the driver took me to the local estate that we were going to start out at. It was called the South Estate, which is exactly where it sounds in southern Hungary. This estate was about 2 hours from the airport, just a short drive, and it's a pleasant one too. Nice countryside, kind of cool seeing the local towns driving through, but just a really easy drive. And the driver was a really nice man, spoke English, and actually works for the outfitter and guides for him a little bit too as a PH. And so arriving at the estate, the South Estate, this is actually one of the lodges that the outfitter personally owns. Corey and I were just talking about that, the differences in lodging a few minutes ago. This lodge is what I would call it 4-star lodging, still five-star service, if that makes sense. It's more of a like a ranch house styled lodge, one level, newer. Everything's brand new, full amenities, everything. But this is one of the lodges that the outfitter actually owns personally. And some of the other estates that he leases, he uses the local hotel that are located right on the hunting estate, which are reserved for hunters only, which is kind of cool in Europe. But this one he owns. And right when we got there, we decided to hit the ground running. He asked me, "Hey, do you want to go out and look at some stags tonight?" And it's like, yeah, sure. So I mean, I hadn't slept since the day before because I caught a red eye flight over there. And we head out right on foot, right there from the lodge. Which, by the way, these estates they're tens of thousands of hectares, which is, I think, what is it? 1 hectare is 2.2 acres.
Yeah,
Sound about right?
I think so. Yeah.
So these leases are huge. They're tens of thousands of hectares, tens of thousands of acres, and there's just a lot of ground out there. And this area out of the south it's very flat, more new growth cover, large pines. It's flatter and a little bit drier, more arid than like the southwest, what we're going to talk about here shortly too. And then we go out, and while we're walking out to the areas to go stand hunt the fields, because in the evenings they typically sit in high seats or sit in some sort of a stand, and then in the evening or in the mornings they stalk. While we're walking out to the fields and these logging cuts, you can just hear stags roaring in every single direction. I mean, it sounded like you were walking into a lion's den. It was just wild. And this is middle of the day. It's 70, 80 degrees. It's hot out. And stags are just roaring their heads off, thinking, God, this is going to be awesome. Hope we see something tonight. We make it to the first field where we're going to stand for the evening. And within about 10 minutes of being there, this big old stag walks out that's about 8.5 kilo. Just a glorious stag. I got tons of video of him, and the outfitter asked me, "What do you think of that stag?" And I said, "That stag is absolutely gorgeous. I personally would tell anyone to shoot that stag the first and last night of this hunt. That stag's incredible. He had a kind of a tight shaped profile to his horns and lots of extra points on the top, good mass, but just a really classic, beautiful looking red stag." And he says, "Yeah, that one's too young." And I'm thinking to myself, that's about a 330-inch free range stag standing in front of me. I don't understand why you'd pass that. He said, "Age. That one's right there on age. He might be 8, but he's most likely 7 years old." And this is where it starts to get interesting. In Hungary and other areas of Europe, they have a different management practice than anything that we have here in the United States and how they manage their animals. And if an animal falls below a certain CIC score, which every animal harvest in Hungary has to go to an official CIC measurer, which is a measurement system that's more complicated than like our SCI or Boone and Crockett system. It includes those types of measurements, but also includes a proper age as well. If the animal falls below a certain CIC score, the outfitters will actually be penalized. And if they are penalized too much, they can lose their license for the year. So you can imagine, in turn, the added accountability from the outfitters and the PHs to the animals and the resource as a result. And so they are extremely cautious about taking animals that are only for sure 8 years or larger, or older, not larger. Or if they are considered a management stag, they'll take a management stag, like a cull stag. But what that also means for you as the hunter is that you're going to see some stags that you're not allowed to shoot because they're not of age yet. And that was the case with this stag. He said, yeah, he's borderline. He might be 8, he might not. But this was legitimately a free range 330, 320, somewhere in there, red stag. Bigger than I had personally seen hunting Argentina multiple times now. So I was just blown away by that. We watched him for a good hour, and it was just amazing. He was roaring and digging and thrashing a tree. It was just amazing. And that night when we got back to the lodge and we're talking to the other hunters, I was telling him about this beautiful stag we saw. The PH I was with, he said it was 8 to 8.5 kilo, which, by the way, we're going to reference in this podcast stags by kilogram quite a bit, because in Hungary, the way they measure their stag After a stag is harvested, they boil the skull, dry it for 24 hours, and then weigh it in kilograms. And then that's how they refer to the stag size. Now, we have created somewhat of a guide to help translate kilos into inches because American hunters, we reference inches, right? Like that's a 300-inch stag, that's a 310 stag, whatever. We have translated that over, so we've got that covered as well. But so my PH, he had told me this is about an 8.5 kilogram stag, which translates to about a 320, 330 stag in most cases.
Which is a giant.
And it's an absolute giant. And I was not expecting to see something that large in the wild, especially my first night there. And it was too young. So it wasn't even in its prime. That was the best part. And so we get back to the lodge that night, and there's stags firing off every single direction from the lodge in the dark. It's pitch black. And on top of it, it's full moon, which just blew my mind. Normally, hunting gets a little bit tough over the full moon if it's during the rut. But in this case, it didn't matter. There's just such a high density of animals there. There's red stags roaring in every single direction. It just didn't matter. And they hunt them so thoughtfully that they never really pressure the animals either. And so you have mature red stags walking around in the middle of the afternoon on a full moon. I mean, it's just unbelievable. But so I'm standing in the parking lot of the lodge, and I'm showing the other hunters this video of this stag just roaring and thrashing. And while I was showing them the video on my phone, I kid you not, a stag comes in 50 yards away and starts roaring at the tree line. It came in to fight.
Yep,
I called him in, showing the guys a video, but there was just so many stags. It was just unbelievable. And they were just roaring in every single direction. And I was just so enthralled by that. And then we're sitting on the patio having dinner that night, listening to stags roar in every single direction. It becomes polarizing. There's just so many of them, and they're so loud. And so that was all the first day. So it's like, man, this is pretty different. This hunting over here is something that I have never seen before, and I knew I was in for a treat. And so the next day we went out again, and a bunch of the other hunters that were at the lodge, which, by the way, this lodge holds about 5 or 6 hunters comfortably, no problem. And each individual hunter has their own PH that they go out and stalk with, and there's plenty of room and plenty of places to go. I mean, after breakfast the next morning, talking to the other hunters, they were from Finland, I believe, and they were actually there on a management stag hunt, which was hilarious because they had a hard time finding a stag small enough to shoot.
So on a management, did it have to be small enough and old enough?
Yes, a cull stag of 5 kilogram or smaller. So they were there to do a cull hunt, which a lot of European hunters, because of just budgeting, are looking to do more cull hunts or lower cost hunts, whereas most American hunters are there for more of a trophy oriented hunt. And so, which we're going to touch on that too, we have geared our packages for our hunters towards the American hunter looking for a trophy stag without size restrictions and that sort. But these guys from Finland were there. They had a hard time finding stags small enough, and they were there for a cull hunt. And it was so funny sitting across the table at breakfast. And they were saying, yeah, I saw a 10 kilogram stag, but it was too big. And then right after that, a 6 kilo came in. He was right there, but and it was just hilarious because I'm thinking to myself, man, I have hunted my ass off before and not had an opportunity at a free range trophy stag, trying to be selective. And, here's the polar opposite of that, of going out and hunting and just essentially passing stags that are, oh, that's a trophy, but he needs 1 more year. Oh, there's a nice stag. He's a trophy. He's a 10 kilogram, 10-year-old stag, but I don't want to pay for that. I want to shoot a cull. It's just mind blowing, that the hunting can be so good that you actually have those decisions. But that's the norm over there on these European estates. And again, these are free range. They are not high fence. They are free range. They are hunted so thoughtfully and meticulously that that's just how the hunting is over there. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that it's a slam dunk either. You still have to work for it. But I mean, everything from the estates are groomed and managed. They have nice trails cut. They're managed for age class, trophy quality, all of it. So
Well, and if
it
you think
was
about it, Europe's been taking hunting that seriously for probably close to 1,000 years or more.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they have it down to a science for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, and so that day was super fun at the South Estate. Since we spent a day and a half there, we decided the following morning we were going to pack up and go head to the next estate. And so from there, we decided to go to the Southwest Estate. Again, about a 2-hour drive. The country of Hungary it's a small country. From there, we went over to the Southwest Estate, and that was neat too because the southern area of Hungary does not get a whole lot of rain throughout the year, but then the Southwest does. So the terrain in these two areas was vastly different, actually. The South was flat, sandy soil, a little bit brushier, more pine, acacia, and then going to the Southwest, it was more old growth timber, like big, big timber, oak, lush green, also a lot hillier. I wouldn't say that it's difficult or barely even scratches the surface of moderate walking, but it's still hillier and a lot more rich soil. So you can just tell the soil is much more rich, black soil and lush green foliage everywhere. And it was interesting to see both spots there. And then also the lodging, it's a little bit of an upgrade in lodging too, going from the south to the southwest. The Southwest Estate uses a historical hunting hotel that's right there on the lease. And what's interesting about that, I mean, the outfitter doesn't own this hotel, but he leases it for the use of his hunters, as well as having rights to the estate. And he purchases the permits and tags there, what have you. But this hotel also used throughout the summer for tourists, whatever. But during hunting season, it is exclusively a hunting hotel, which is super cool. But that's really common in Europe. That was also neat to learn about. And then this hotel also has a chef, full service staff there, everything. Really, really nice. I would rate it at 5-star for sure. Just a beautiful historical hotel and super fun to hunt at. And then, of course, they have their own staff of PHs there that work at the estate, which that was also really interesting. At both the South and the Southwest Estate, they have their own staff of PHs that are responsible for grooming and managing as well as guiding these estates in the area. That's their full-time job from the government. So super interesting. And so let's see, we get to the Southwest Estate, we have lunch, and then we get ready to go out for the evening. My PH that I went out with, his name was Levy, super nice guy. He spoke some English, which that's another thing that's good to know about Hungary. Hungary is not a country that is widely English speaking. It's a little bit more old world traditional European in that many people do speak English, but not many people are completely fluent. So there's enough English to get by, but it's good to just kind of know that in advance. There is just a little bit of a language barrier. So download Google Translate. Hungarian translates to English pretty cleanly. So I had no issues with that. And Levy spoke enough English to where we could get the job done and we had a great time. But
Hunglish.
Hunglish, yeah, a lot of hand signals, but Levy and I, we just had such a wonderful time. When I go back next year to host some groups, I hope I get to hunt with Levy again. And the Southwest Estate is where I actually got to hunt for myself personally. So I went out with Levy for a couple days, and we just had such a great time. And I think I kind of drove him nuts because after seeing how big the stags are here, I said I wasn't planning on shooting a stag on this trip, but I mean, I guess if I'm going to, then I'm going to be pretty particular. And so
Bigger, go home.
go big or go home. And that's what I did. I went home
Yeah.
without a stag, which I'm completely fine with because I legitimately passed on 3 or 4 stags that were 300 to 320 inches
That's crazy.
because I got pulled off of some stags that were 6 and 7-year old that were probably 340. And I was just like, well, it's just a matter of time before we find one of those giants.
Yep.
If I'm going to buy a stag while I'm here, I might as well get a good one, right? So I was
For
driving
sure.
him nuts with that, but we had so much fun. At the Southwest Estate, like I said, it's greener, a richer soil, just a different place, a little bit more of a 5-star experience. The Southwest Estate is the place that I would take my girlfriend or wife. The South Estate is the place where I would go with the guys. Just South Estate's a little bit more of a guy's atmosphere. The Southwest, a little bit more sophisticated experience, I think. But hunting wise, they're both phenomenal. When we went out for the first night with Leve to go sit a high seat, again, first night, saw an absolute giant stag. I mean, this was legitimately a 340, 350-inch free range stag, probably, he said 8.5 to 9, maybe even 9.5 kilogram stag. It came out in the field right at dusk, and he just couldn't get a really great look at it, didn't have a great feel of what it was. And he said it might not be 8 years old. I'm just not sure. Let's come back tomorrow and look at it in the daylight. And I'm thinking to myself, again, is it going to be there? I mean, I'm used to hunting pressured animals in the United States where this might be the only opportunity you have in a year at your target animal because they're pressured, they're not managed that way. And I'm just thinking, yeah, that's fine. If you don't feel good about it, let's come back tomorrow. So we went out, we did a morning hunt, which was so much fun in and of itself. Again, the morning hunting is stalking, the evening hunting is sitting. But we came back that next night, and that stag came out within 30 seconds of the time it did the night before, just like clockwork. And
Crazy.
they just, when you never pressure an animal, they act like animals do in the wild. It's that simple. And they just hunt them so thoughtfully. The stag came out and he looked at it again and he said, I think it might need another year or two. It might be too young. And they cannot risk getting negative points from the government, from the CIC score. So I got to see this magnificent stag multiple times out in this field before we decided we were going to go on to something else. And then the morning hunting there, like I said, that was awesome. The morning hunting is so action packed. I would compare the stalking in the morning to archery elk hunting a max point unit out west.
Wow.
No exaggeration. I mean, the morning hunt that we went out, we got into the timber with the stags and started stalking them and actually roaring and interacting with them too. It was just wild. We got into a group of 3 of them fighting at one point. They every time we'd get close and start getting a good look, they'd kind of chase each other off in the trees again, and we just couldn't get a good look at them, so we backed off of that. We kept bumping herds of wild boars. That was wild too. These wild boars, they'd kind of dig themselves a bed in the rich soil and cover themselves up in dirt, and you'd walk to within 20 feet of them before jumping them, and you can't even see them. They look like piles of dirt. That was
That's
pretty
crazy.
cool. They're just covered up in wild boars there. And then we found one stag that we thought was going to be legal that had bedded down about mid-morning and was just laying in its bed roaring, and we could spot him maybe 500-600 yards through the trees. And so we dropped down through a valley and came up underneath him and stalked him to about 50 yards of his bed, and we were staring at him in his bed, but there was a little hill between us and him, so we could just see from the pedicle up. And I was on the shooting sticks on this stag, again, about a 330, 340 stag, like 8.5, 9 kilogram stag, for about 20 minutes. Like crosshairs on the stag, waiting for him to stand up and the PH to say yes. That stag stood up and the PH said no. It's like, son of a, but it was so cool. I mean, just being in
Yeah.
the trees with the stags and listening to them roar and interact and kind of slipping in between them and trying to pick one out to go after. And by the way, the parts I'm leaving out are the legal stags that we kept calling in that I was passing on. Those are the parts I'm leaving out in this story too. I have videos of 2 stags between 290 and 310 that I passed on that morning.
Levy wanted to kill you, didn't he?
He's like, good, shoot. I'm like, I like that one better, Lev. And he's like, it's okay. He just kept saying it. It's okay. Yeah, go for it.
Archery is you mentioned archery elk. Archery is legal in Hungary, and how would that work there?
I think it would have been fantastic. If I was hunting archery, I would have shot the stags that I mentioned I was passing on, because we were calling those stags into 40 to 60 yards. It was very similar to archery elk hunting, but I had a blazer in my hand instead of a bow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool though that you can archery hunt in Hungary because there's a lot of spots in Europe where you can't.
You absolutely can. One of the other gentlemen that was at the lodge there in the Southwest Estate, he actually came from the UK and he was bow hunting. So he had multiple opportunities throughout the week. Let's see, I was only there for 2 days and we got there the same time. I didn't hear how the rest of his hunt went, but while I was there for a couple days, he had multiple opportunities and he was being pretty selective at first. And I think he said he was going to lower his trophy goals towards the end of the week a little bit. But he had multiple opportunities while I was there and he was passing on upper 200-inch stags, honestly. So pretty cool. Between the density of animals, the roaring action, the style of hunting, it was just enthralling. Like I can see why people get obsessed with red stag hunting and archery elk hunting. It's super fun interacting with the animals while they're rutting. You're hunting in an area that's very conducive for spot and stalk hunting and ambush hunting, as well as when the weather is super mild. I mean, it's just such a pleasing hunt in so many ways. And on top of that, we haven't touched on this yet. The hunting is affordable.
It sure
These
is.
hunting packages are the same or less than a premium elk hunt in the United States, in most cases less. The programs that we have set up for our hunters is going to be an all-inclusive 5-day, 6-night, no size restriction, meaning you can shoot a 6 kilogram or a 10 kilogram as long as it meets the age requirement. The pH gives you the thumbs up. 5-day, 6-night, all-inclusive meals, accommodation, hunting permit, airport pickup, no trophy fees for $7,000 US.
With a
Outside of that,
guarantee.
with a guarantee at an opportunity of a 6 kilogram stag or larger, or 50% of your money back.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And the thing is, on a free range hunt, when people ask me normally, hey, is there any sort of a guarantee? What if I don't shoot something or have an opportunity? Do I get to come back? Do I get my money back? In North America and most of the world, the answer is absolutely no. I mean, you're paying for an experience first and foremost. However, the European hunting culture views that differently and they hunt differently too. So I've kind of just learned to embrace that because I'm actually a little nervous about that. But after going there and seeing it, I mean, you'll have opportunities daily. It's an absolute no-brainer. And I was there at a time when the outfitter, he said, mate, I think the rut might be a little bit better next week. I don't know. And I'm thinking to myself, we are covered up, man. This is awesome. And he's like, I think it'll be a little better next week, though. I was thinking there's really nothing left to improve on here, man. I'm passing on stags daily. I'm having the time of my life. And again, my number one priority being there was to go tour the ranches, meet the outfitter, just understand operations better. I mean, we checked all those boxes super early and I got to hunt a little bit for myself. Next time I go, I'm going to hunt the whole full 5 days.
Could you have shot roe deer or fallow deer?
Roe deer, yes. We saw quite a few of them, and the roe deer are abundant and you can hunt them throughout the whole season. For fallow, however, we do that a little bit differently. So we should touch on that for combination options. The roe deer and the boar, those are very affordable add-ons, just a few $100s. We do have packages that are standalone for fallow deer, or we can do red stag fallow deer combination hunts. However, we have to get the timing right to do that combination hunt, because the fallow season is during the month of October. The red stag season is during the month of September. And it's very important to note in Hungary that the red stags cycle their rut at different times throughout the country. So in the south, the rut starts at the end of August and finishes about mid-September. At the southwest area, the rut starts beginning of September and cycles out about the 20th, 25th of September. Now, in the northern portion of the country, again, there's more estates up there that we operate at. We call that the North Estate. The North Estate actually has the latest rut of the 3 different regions in Hungary. The rut starts there around the 20th, 25th, and goes into the beginning of October. So where I'm leading into with all of this, if someone wants to do a red stag fallow combo, We're going to plan it for the last few days of September, first couple days of October. One, because we need to overlap the seasons. Two, we want to overlap the timing so that way you can be in peak rut for both animals. And then three, we're going to be very selective of the location to facilitate that. So long story short, if you want to do a combo, just talk to us. We'll look at options, see if we can align it with your schedule to give you guys a proper hunt. And then also a combo. I mentioned the all-inclusive red stag hunt with no size restriction and a 6 kilogram guarantee. That's a $7,000 hunt. The red stag fallow combo will add days to that. And then also that's a $10,000 combo with a guarantee. Again, all-inclusive, door-to-door airport pickup, tags, license, permit, guiding, meals, accommodation, everything. And then
That's
we can,
still
of course,
cheaper than
add.
you.
It's still so affordable. It's such a great value, really. And on top of it, you can shoot extra red stags. You can add a roe deer. You can add a boar. There's ways that we can add a fallow, like we were talking. And also, something kind of interesting, the packages that we've put together are for 95% of the hunters. So that leaves the question, who are the other 5%? The other 5% of hunters are guys that have done these types of hunts before. Maybe they want a little bit larger stag. Maybe they want a little bit different custom experience. Maybe we want to do a full country tour and multiple leases. Where I'm going with that is we have the ability to customize these packages too. So let's say if somebody says, hey, I want to shoot a 10 kilogram stag and I want a guarantee, we can do it. However, what that involves is the outfitter is going to need to have the PHs do a little bit of pre-scouting. We're probably going to purchase a permit from a different estate that is managed for that size of stag. And that's not to downplay any of the states that we have our hunts set up at, but where those stags produce on average 7 to 10 kilogram stags, there are estates out there that are producing top 10 stags in the country every year. Now, those estates have a more expensive permit, a longer waiting list, so on and so forth. You can kind of see where I'm going with all that. So if somebody has a custom package in mind, we can do it with enough pre-planning. And our outfitter over there, my partner there, he's very well networked. He's very well connected with all the leases within the country. It's so interesting, all the things that we can do there. But for most hunters that want to go there and have a great hunt, great experience, good value, the standard packages that we have put together, whether it be red stag alone, fallow combo, the 3 different estates and all their different highlights, that's for 95% of the hunters that want to go do these hunts. They're a tremendous value and will far exceed everyone's expectations on their hunt, I promise.
Yeah. Sounds like it. It
Yeah.
sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. I truly loved every minute over there, and the service was just awesome. Like the host at the Southwest Estate, and he went so far as to learn how I wanted my coffee done, how I liked my eggs done in the morning. I mean, it's just world-class service over there.
Yeah. Yep.
So
I feel like I touch on this every single time, but the difference in a North American hunt and an international hunt is night and day.
yeah,
There's no ifs, ands, or buts.
yeah, and that's, you and I sitting here talking about that. It doesn't mean that we don't enjoy North American hunting either.
Absolutely.
They're wonderful, but dollar for dollar for your value, international. And
absolutely.
it's good to touch on that too. What does it take to hunt internationally? I think that it's a bigger leap, or it's not as big of a leap, and it's not as complicated as most hunters think.
No, it isn't.
You need a couple of things.
It's easier than going to Alaska, I bet.
But it's going to Alaska and going to Europe is the same duration of travel, essentially.
Well, listen to this. I was doing, how on Instagram you can put in the map where the picture was taken. So, and then it gives you the miles from, I think it was Instagram. It gives you the miles from your current location. So it might not have been Instagram, but in some program I was doing that, and I was looking at Kotzebue, and it was almost Kotzebue, Alaska. It was almost 8,000 miles from my house in Idaho. Then I did one with Hungary, and it was like 4,200 miles. It was half from Idaho. Idaho
hmm
to Hungary is half the distance from Idaho to Alaska. That blew my
No
mind.
kidding.
It shouldn't have. Maybe I'm just an idiot, but wow, that's crazy.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it just goes to show it's not as complicated and it's not as huge of a leap of faith to travel internationally as what a lot of people might think. And once you break the ice and do it once, you're probably going to think, wow, why didn't I do this before? This really wasn't that hard. There's something about showing up at an international airport and seeing and realizing that life exists outside of our own country, believe it or not.
Pretty high quality life too.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about that
Again,
Istanbul airport?
yeah, Istanbul is
Incredible.
it's like a futuristic shopping mall out of that movie, what's it called? Demolition Man. Remember that?
I haven't seen that.
Bad reference, sorry. So let's call it a futuristic shopping mall.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's crazy. It's absolutely
Yeah,
insane.
yeah. And traveling internationally is so easy. Obviously, you're going to need a passport. Let's touch on that. So you have to have a passport to travel internationally. However, it's also good to know that even if you don't travel internationally, you should have an up-to-date passport at all times anyways, because a passport is the most universally recognized form of identification in the world. So you should always have an up-to-date passport anyways. However, for the purpose of traveling internationally for hunts, you should have a passport with no less than 6 months left till expiration at the time of the hunt. Say that again. You need to have 6 months until expiration at the time of the hunt. So let's say you book a red stag hunt right now for next year in September. Do the math, plan accordingly. Passports are not that hard to acquire. They just need a little bit of time. Beyond a passport, what you need is, bless you, beyond a passport, you'll need a 4457 form for your weapon. If you want to bring your own weapon, that's super straightforward. That is a form that you have filled out on your rifle and scope at the local U.S. Customs office at your local international airport. It's free. It takes 10 minutes. It'll take you longer to park your car and drive there than it will be to get that form filled out. You'll need that for customs and acquiring weapons permits overseas, which, by the way, the outfitter handles all the application of weapons permits. Too easy. You just need to be able to get him passport 4457. And in the case of European countries, they will ask you for a copy of a valid or previous hunting license or tag that you've possessed in the United States, just to show that you're allowed to go hunting in the US. That's it. Pretty simple. And then as far as the travel itself, I booked my ticket on United.com and they partnered with Swiss Air and Lufthansa, I believe it's pronounced, for my flights. The reason I did that, I knew that United had those partners. United is a great airline, obviously, but I wanted to test Swiss Air on the way there and I wanted to test Lufthansa on the way back. So that way I could get a feel for both airlines, recommending to clients going forward. Honestly, they're both fantastic. I mean, they served great food in travel. The flights were great. They were well organized. I couldn't tell the difference between the two, if I'm being honest. I will say, though, that of all the layover options going to Budapest, let's see, Vienna, Frankfurt, Germany, there was one other. I do think I favor Vienna, however, if given the option to lay over. I couldn't really tell the difference in the airports. However, Vienna conveniently is located between 2 to 4 hours from our hunting estates in Budapest or in Hungary. So let's say you miss your flight in Vienna. Guess what? In European countries, they can just have their driver come over and pick you up from Vienna instead if you miss your flight. So kind of nice to know.
Yeah, for sure.
But travel was easy. You can book it on Expedia. You can book it with your preferred travel agent. You can book it directly with the airline. I can recommend travel agents. All that stuff's super easy. And the outfitters are very hands-on with planning this stuff. So super easy. Really not that much more complicated than booking a flight from here to Idaho for me.
Right. Right. Cool.
So yeah,
What
and
else?
then touching on another important one for international travel, how do we get our trophies home?
Yeah,
Let's touch on that.
that's probably the hardest
Super
part.
easy.
Well, it's
Yeah,
the
and
most frustrating part because you have to wait.
yeah, you have to wait and you have to accept that, you don't have 100% control for a little bit of time. And that's
Yep.
okay. That's just how it works. Anybody that's hunted internationally knows that you get your trophy back within months to up to a year. I mean, there's processing times overseas that are government controlled, not outfitter controlled. And we know that governments operate at the speed of not light, whatever the
Wow.
opposite of light is. That's what the
Guys need to
speed they
understand
travel
that.
at.
I have a client that I helped book in Argentina this spring. You
Mm-hmm.
know who I'm talking about. And he's sending me texts like monthly on the status of our trophies. And
Uh-huh.
I have no control of that. We have no control. It's going to happen. It's in the process, but it happens. Who knows?
Yeah.
So
And the thing with
anyway,
Argentina, especially, their government is exceptionally slow the last 3 years. However, all of our clients' trophies from Argentina this spring are sitting at the expediter verified. They're just every single individual person's trophy has to be created, permitted, and set up for expedite. It's a process.
yeah,
But touching on that, it's the same process overseas in Europe. Post hunt, after the trophy leaves the possession of the outfitter. I should say from the time it's harvested. The PHs provide trophy care. They of course flesh, salt, dry the capes or hides depending on what your preference. They do the skull boil there. That's how they also measure the kilogram, the weight of the skull. After that, the trophy does have to go to an official CIC measurer and scorer that has to be registered with the government. That adds a slight step, but this all happens postseason. And then from there, they go to the taxidermist who prepares them for expediting. Expediting is shipping from the foreign country to our country. On your end, as the hunter, you'll need to have the importer set up. I know of several importers that I can recommend. Oftentimes, your preferred taxidermist has their own preferred importer. I've used DNL Customs out of Chicago, Coppersmith Logistics. There's so many good ones in the United States, and they know their stuff. So work through your taxidermist, talk to who you want to use, kind of back plan it off of that. But in country, in Hungary, it's actually a pretty fast process. Within about 3 months after the hunt, the trophies are prepared to ship. After
oh,
that,
that's
it's
cool.
just the export import paperwork between two countries talking to each other. That's it. And then most people are familiar with what's called a dip and pack. That's where they have a boiled skull and a fleshed, salted, and dried cape or hide packed in a crate, whatever you want to call it. Just a basic dip and pack where it's going to arrive to the United States ready to be tanned and prepared for taxidermy. That's a dip and pack. Dip and packs average between 12 and 15 right now per crate. And if you have multiple species in the crate, a little bit more. If you have an animal that has CITES, which that's a whole different topic, different kind of permitting system. If they have CITES, then okay, a little bit more permitting cost. That's different importer to importer as well. But long story
None of the
short,
none of the hungry species are CITES, though, are they?
not to my understanding.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Yeah, stag, fallow, boar, roe. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
but that does come into play for like say Argentina, the black buck or CITES. Yeah. So like when I had my black buck import stuff done, there was a little extra fee from the import broker to do the CITES paperwork, which it just is what it is. My Marco Polo from Kyrgyzstan last year, there's going to be some CITES paperwork associated with that. I mean, it's just part of it. So, but the outfitter oversees all that. They have everyone in place to do so. Very easy process, but it takes a little time.
nice.
Yeah. And
Uh,
so we talked about pre-hunt
what other
logistics. We
states
talked about the different hunt areas, post-hunt logistics, the hunts themselves.
did you go to any? We don't have to get into them, but did you go to any of the other estates? There are, as far as I can tell, one, two, three.
Yeah, there's the south and the southwest, which I visited. The east estate is more of the wing shooting and driven type hunting. We didn't have a chance to go over there. And then the north estate, we didn't make it over to because that was just on the other side of the country. The north estate, the highlights there, excuse me, are that it has a later rut. It's much hillier, so it is more of a hilly, ridgy, moderate difficulty type hunt, and that's a good area to combo with fallow, which, by the way, that doesn't mean we can't combo with fallow in the other areas, but that's more of one of the features up there. The southwest estate, we talked about that, a little bit different rut timing. Also, in the southwest estate, this is interesting, because the vegetation is so much more green and lush, the stags on average had a darker antler color and also a slightly longer main beam. Like it was pretty consistent across all the stags I
Interesting.
saw. And the South Estate, slightly lighter color antler, slightly more of a tighter rack profile, how I would describe it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Where
I do.
it's more of a tighter basket versus a
Big
long
open. Yeah.
profile, right? They score the same, but slightly different genetic there. And there's actually some backstory to that I can tell you. But and then the South Estate, it's more flatter, sandy soil, a little bit different accommodations between all the different estates, but I would consider customer service 5-star across the board, between 4 to 5 star accommodation at every single location. And so you can see obviously the every single estate has its highlights. Depending on what type of experience you're after, we're going to schedule it beginning of September, end of September, October, whenever, because we're only booking these for prime dates too. Quick fun story. I learned so much about the history of Hungary while I was there. Something I thought was super intriguing. So the South Estate, one of the reasons the genetic there is a little bit different than the Southwest, because originally the traditional Hungarian genetic was that longer main beam, like the Southwest. And according to the source that told me the stories, let's call that, I think it was in the late 1800s, there was a war in Hungary, and the soldiers stationed all over Hungary, they were hunting red stag for sustenance. And so the country was actually almost hunted out, almost depleted of its resource, except for in the Southwest, it was landlocked by a river delta. And so there's an area within the Southwest that landlocked a very high density of animals. So then after the war, after all of that, the country wanted to, revive its resources, and it wasn't happening very fast. So what do countries do when they want to replenish their resource? They supplement it with something else, right? So they actually brought stags in from Czech, and they started kind of spreading those out throughout the country a little bit. And what's interesting about this is the Czech stags have shorter main beams and more points, whereas the Hungarian, as well as I think it's the Romanian stag, have longer main beams, more mass, but slightly shorter points on average. Well, when they mixed those two genetics, one of four things could have happened. They lucked out and got the best of those four things. The best possible outcome between those was the outcome. They retained the long main beam from one genetic, and they retained the multiple points from the other genetic. And so that particular cross strain is very strong in the South.
Got it. Cool.
Yeah. If you can't tell, I'm kind of a long story guy. So if you guys ever ask me a question, you're gonna get a story. So
That's good.
yeah. Yeah, but I love learning about the history of countries and
I
the
do too.
origin of these things, the why behind everything. And Europe is just so rich in history, and there's long stories, and these are the kind of stories and conversations you're going to have with the local PHs and the outfitter at dinner every single night, learning about the history of the country and just everything about it. And I love that aspect, the cultural immersion on international hunts. It's so fun.
Absolutely. I so very much agree. And seeing how they live outside of the lodge, for me, the lodge is
Hmm.
cool. The being pampered part of the experience is actually kind of nice to be hunting out of kind of a pampered type situation. But I
Hmm.
really like to be able to see how my guide is for real. Like,
Yeah.
how that culture really is for real. And you spend a week with the guy and you kind of get a good feel for it if you're interested.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
yeah, that's fun for me.
Yeah.
That
You
probably doesn't
definitely
matter.
enjoy that one. What's that?
That may not matter to some people, but I bet it does to others. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's part of the experience. Like, this is a type of trip where I wouldn't be afraid to take a group of guys as buddies, and I wouldn't be afraid to take my girlfriend or wife, either or. And I would strongly encourage, too, adding extra days for touring in Budapest and touring the countryside if you can, too. the city of Budapest, I say that, but then I didn't get to because this was such a fast and furious trip for me to just blaze over there and see as many leases as I could. But um, the city of Budapest is amazing. We drove through it and just did a real quick tour on the way to the airport back to catch my flight. There's so many cool places to visit in Budapest. It would be worth spending a couple days there. I mean, it's a dining experience, culinary experience, touring experience, cultural experience. There's a historical big game hunting museum in Budapest that's world renowned. Another little fun fact, since we're telling stories again, the big game hunting museum in Budapest, Hungary, holds the country's records. And so if a hunter takes the new country record or the Hungarian champion, as it translates, and they say the museum will take your trophy and provide you with a free replica and then house the original as a part of just their game laws. So if you shoot the new world record free range stag in Hungary, you get to have a free replica and it's going to be memorialized in a museum. Same with fallow, roe deer, so on and so forth. Super cool. So I would strongly recommend going and seeing that museum too. It's
Sure.
really,
I bet it's
really
awesome.
cool. So, these international trips, they're not just about the phenomenal hunting, even though that's the highlight and that's what sells us to go there. I definitely encourage you to spend some more time there, whether it be a group of guys or your spouse or couples trip, whatever. It's a little bit for everyone for sure.
Yep, I agree. I agree. Do you know much about the driven stuff?
The driven stuff, that's one that I would also like to dive into and experience someday. They do the driven hunts in December, January, and February after the rest of the big game hunting. That is a high volume hunt and it's pretty much exactly how it sounds, driven. And so they have the PHs, they're the beaters, as they call them. In the Midwest for deer hunters, we call those pushers.
Yep.
And then they have the hunters who are the shooters or the post guys, whatever you want to call it. So the beaters and the shooters work together to do these big drives throughout the leases. They can take groups of up to 10 to 15 hunters at a time on these leases. And in 5 days, it's realistic to say that a group of 10 plus hunters will take between 50 and 100 plus animals. They do them for boars. They do them for deer, red deer, roe deer, fallow. It's pretty action packed, pretty intense. The boar hunting is the most popular for the driven hunting, of course.
And pheasants, I would assume.
Pheasants as well. The thing to know about pheasant hunting in Hungary is that if a group wants to shoot any less than a couple hundred birds, then don't waste your time. I mean, that's the average number. If a guy wants to go shoot a dozen birds in a couple days, that's a really good South Dakota group trip. But if you want to go and shoot a couple hundred birds with a group in less than a week, then yeah, that's Hungary for sure.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It looks pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It would definitely be a thrilling experience. Adrenaline, action packed, see a lot of animals, pretty intense.
Yep. For sure.
But it'd be
For
fun.
sure.
But all these hunts are a gentleman's hunt, though. I mean, these are all hunts that will accommodate any ability level, any age, any group dynamic. I mean, there's something for everyone there, really, and at a great value.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a catch. I'm so glad that I decided to go. And, you know, touching on like where we started the podcast of we are so stinking busy in the fall. It's actually hard for me to cut loose and take time to go see these places and do these things, but it's such an important part of what we do, going and seeing these things for ourselves, meeting the operators, spending time on the ground. I mean, truly that, we're all hunters and these are the things that we enjoy, but sometimes business gets in the way and, we have to, we forget to enjoy it. But I mean, I am so glad that I took the time to go there, bought the ticket, spent time with the operator, built a relationship, and vetted the operation, because it's really a hidden gem. Like, I think that it's some of the best red stag hunting in the world. I didn't know that red stag hunting could be this good.
Yeah,
so we're super excited to move forward and send clients there in the future. We've checked all the boxes on our end.
We have open availability for next season right now,
Yeah,
but probably
we
for not
have
long.
we've just started booking for next season as of 24 hours ago, and we've already got two groups booked. Today is Thursday, the 20th, and our advertisement went out yesterday. And I'm going to start calling people back after this podcast for it, and just word of mouth and mentioning the hunt to a few good friends and clients. Like I said, we already have two groups booked for next year. I have a few other on the waiting list I need to call back. So it's going to be a really popular hunt for us in the future, and I'm so excited to send our clients there. So,
Yep. Yep. If you're interested, get a hold of Kyle.
yeah, or fill out the form on the website.
That's the easiest
Reach
way.
out to me. I'm pretty easy to find. And if you already work with one of the consultants on our team, give them a shout. We'll get you the information, and yeah, we'll get you there.
Awesome. Well, does that pretty much cover it? I mean, you answered every question I had, so I didn't have to talk much.
Yeah, well, you can tell I get so excited talking about it because I'm so excited about this hunt. And we this outfitter has just been so amazing to work with, and customer service, communication, hunt quality, everything. It's just checked every box and exceeded my expectations and goals. And so we've got all the dates lined up for next year. We have exclusive outdoor international hosted dates if you'd be interested in hunting with one of us. We have dates for groups, singles, single, combo species, all of it. So yeah, please reach out if you're interested. And they're all prime dates.
One thing too that we still have a little bit of availability on is Charlie's Ireland and Scotland hosted hunts. We still have a
Absolutely.
few spots available for those two, which are both awesome hunts too.
Totally. Yeah, those are amazing experiences of themselves too.
Yep. Yep. Totally different experience, less trophy quality, but different experience. So very cool.
Yeah. It's good to highlight that too, that the Hungary red stag is the largest. The Scottish bloodline of red stag is one of the smaller, but those hunts are as much about the hunting as the cultural experience. The highlight of those are the touring of the country, the cultural experience, the fine lodges, and the hunting's just phenomenal. They don't have Hungarian stags. It's just that
Right.
simple.
Yep.
And I definitely would not downplay any of those hunts as well. They're incredible
Me neither.
experiences, and Charlie's done a great job organizing them with the outfitter, and those are amazing and a great value.
I agree, man. All right. Well, I know we both have plenty to do. I'm going to get this
Yep.
processed and published unless you have something else.
Nope, that's it. And I think the next one, maybe we'll talk about Russia finally and spill the
Sounds
beans on
good.
how cool that was. That was another one that blew my mind.
Yeah. Very cool.
It was super
At some
cool.
point, I'll have to tell you this is probably a podcast episode, little story I have from 2 weeks ago helping a buddy pack out an elk. It's crazy, but that's for a different time.
Cool. Well, that would be a really good podcast to just drink coffee and shoot the shit.
Yeah, it would. Yep. Or do it in the evening and not drink coffee, drink something else.
Yeah, drink something else. Some cooled adult beverages.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're due for an old fashioned night, aren't we?
We are. Yes,
We're
we are.
overdue.
For sure. All right, man. I'm going to hang it up. Thank
All
you.
right, sounds good, brother. See ya.
See ya.